I want to dive right into this first GOP debate on Wednesday and the former president's interview with Tucker Carlson, as well as how the indictments against the president could affect his run. Joining us now, pollster John McLaughlin. John, thank you so much for coming. At Wednesday night's GOP debate, 8 presidential candidates sparred against each other, but without the GOP frontrunner, President Trump, there. Here's what former Vice President Mike Pence had to say about his ex-boss's absence.
I think it was a missed opportunity for President Trump not to be here.
John, your thoughts. Did Donald Trump miss an opportunity that might harm his chances for the nomination? I mean, it seems like his absence gave the others a chance to break out unchallenged.
No, we have a full disclosure. I work for President Trump, and we've released a poll today where he leads the field where he has 51% of the vote. Ramaswamy is in second place at 13%, and Ron DeSantis has fallen to 9%. Others are, Mike Pence and Nikki Haley are 4%. One-on-one against Ron DeSantis. Trump's beating him 72-28. What's important about that is back in January, Trump led the field 42 to DeSantis' 31. It was DeSantis and him were close at 52 for Trump and 40 for DeSantis. Now it's all gone away, and the reason is because in this poll today, Donald Trump is beating Joe Biden 47-43, and rather than go into the debate, he's got to prepare to be arraigned. This is the 4th indictment of a former U.S. president within 5 months that is being engineered by a corrupt President Biden. And, most voters looking at this, they're saying they want to vote on the election. 56% of all voters want to vote on the election. They don't want the courts to decide, only 34%. They see a double standard of justice, 59%. So, Donald Trump, these other candidates, if they wanted to do something constructive, like when Dr. King, those of us who remember the civil rights struggle, Dr. King used to be arrested and all the civil rights leaders would go with him. Here you've got all these Republicans, sniping at Trump. If they had any decent poll numbers, Joe Biden would indict them too. I mean, this is an existential threat to the Republican Party and an existential threat to political opposition and free speech in the United States.
John, not to interrupt you, but we should tell people, and it's breaking today, Elon Musk has now been sued by the Biden administration, claiming that his brand X doesn't hire refugees at a large enough number. So there is something happening with the use of the federal government and these institutions to target political opponents, or at least that's the appearance. I want to talk for a moment about that youngest contender in the race, 38-year-old entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy. He received a lot of attention from his opponents last night. He was piled on a number of times for his youth and inexperience. Here's a bit of his exchange regarding foreign policy and Ukraine.
Mr. Ramaswamy, you would not support an increase of funding to Ukraine?
I would not. And I think that this is disastrous, that we are protecting against an invasion across somebody else's border when we should use those same military resources to prevent across the invasion of our own southern border here in the United States.
So the reality
make
America less safe. You have no foreign policy experience, and it shows.
And let us be honest as Republicans. I'm the only person on the stage who isn't bought and paid for, so I can say this. The climate change agenda is a hoax.
Hold on. I've had enough. I've had enough already tonight of a guy who sounds like ChatGPT standing up here. And the last person in one of these debates, Brett, who stood in the middle of the stage and said, "What's a skinny guy with an odd last name doing up here?" was Barack Obama, and I'm afraid we're dealing with the same type of amateur standing on stage tonight.
It got pretty heated, John. Did Ramaswamy hold his own, or was he exposed?
No, I think it might have backfired a little bit because when they all pile on like that, he gets the center of attention. And the key thing in a debate when you have 8 people like that is to have attention. And he had a point of view that's different than the others. But still, they're all, it's Donald Trump, what's going on right now in the United States. Trump is sucking the oxygen away from these opponents because he's dealing with Joe Biden trying to put him in jail rather than lose an election to him. So these other candidates, when they're sniping at each other, it really doesn't matter to the average Republican. The average Republican is saying the country's on the wrong track. 67% of all the voters see that. Almost 2/3 are saying that the economy is on the wrong track. The majority say we're in a recession. 83% say they've been negatively impacted by inflation. And they're saying when Trump was president, these problems were solved. We were paying $2 a gallon for gas. I wasn't worried about my heating bills going up. I could afford to buy a new home.
Before I turn to Trump, give me your best take on the polling vis-a-vis Ukraine. For some reason, Ukraine was a big topic of conversation the other night, and obviously the Biden administration is throwing hundreds of billions of dollars at the country. How is it polling among Americans at this point?
Oh, right. Well, first of all, right now, people think this war needs to end. They need, we need peace. They don't like what Russia's doing as an aggressor. But I also do work in Eastern Europe, where I have worked for democracies and NATO allies over there, and they're afraid that the Russians may go into their country. But they're also afraid that Joe Biden's too weak to back them up. And what's gone on with American foreign policies ever since Biden surrendered Afghanistan, it's been a signal to our enemies that, we're not going to stop them. When Trump was president, we basically, Putin wouldn't go into Ukraine. He was afraid because Donald Trump, was somebody who was going to stand up. And so the Ukrainian issue right now is a problem because Biden's still president. He's very weak, and Americans are concerned that he's not going to stand up for freedom and democracy. And so he's sending them money, and people aren't sure how it's being spent. But the tragedy of that war is still going on.
John, you mentioned a moment ago Trump was the centerpiece of that debate, even though he wasn't there. Here's a bit of the back and forth and whether Trump would have their support if nominated. Watch.
Look, here's the bottom line. Someone's got to stop normalizing this conduct. Okay? Now, whether or not you believe that the criminal charges are right or wrong, the conduct is beneath the office of President of the United States.
We have to look at the fact that 3/4 of Americans don't want a rematch between Trump and Biden. And we have to face the fact that Trump is the most disliked politician in America. We can't win a general election that way.
Here's the thing.
This
election is not about January 6th of 2021. It's about January 20th of 2025, when the next president is going to take office.
John, is any of this having an impact? I mean, Trump is at 52% in some of the latest polls, and I know you have that new one out where he's even higher.
Right. And what the difference is, see, right now, the voters are looking at this and they're afraid because 62% agree that if Biden can do this to Donald Trump, he could prosecute any of his political opponents. That's a poll that we took in June, and you got 58% saying they're concerned that if they can weaponize the DOJ with the FBI and the IRS, they'll actually go after any American citizen. So there's a real fear of basically an overreach by Biden and his administration that in order to win an election and stop a political opponent that could beat him, that basically they're undermining democracy in the United States. They're denying people civil rights, and it extends to, remember when the Biden FBI was investigating Catholics because they were going to mass, et cetera, or going to Latin mass, and then they were investigating parents that were concerned about what's going on in their schools. So there's something going on in the United States right now where they're looking at Joe Biden and they're saying he's going too far. And they're seeing the stories of corruption where allegedly they took tens of millions of dollars from foreign countries. And people are saying our government's corrupt, our system's broken, and we've got a president who's just gone too far and he's too weak and he's not successful. So I think people are looking at this and saying it's there's something really wrong here, and that's why Donald Trump's still ahead in the polls. That's why he's going up.
Yeah, what's shaping up to be the big news of the week is President Trump turning himself in to these authorities in Georgia. I figured he'd use Thursday because it followed the debate. He sucks all the oxygen out of the room and the news cycle. He's being, as you know, charged with attempting to overturn the 2020 election. My question is this: what impact are these indictments having on Trump's candidacy?
It's helping him because it's exposing the political opposition. So, I mean, I worked last year for Prime Minister Netanyahu in Israel, and he had not similar, but he had corruption charges against him. And the whole media in Israel was against him. What the Netanyahu campaign did was they live streamed the corruption trial, and the whole thing fell apart. It was exposed as a political prosecution. Donald Trump's being filmed and videoed when he's before this judge, when he's being arraigned by DA Willis in Fulton County. And I think Americans are appalled by it because they want to vote in the election. We want to have a real campaign to talk about things that are affecting people, whether it's the economy, inflation, national security, crime, immigration. They want to discuss those issues. And right now they're being exposed with this basically political prosecution of Donald Trump because he's leading Joe Biden in the polls, and people it's too much. They're being way too much.
And John, this Fulton County made-for-television event could backfire on them. Their lead actor here is unpredictable. But according to a recent Reuters poll, and this is a question I know a lot of people have, if the president is convicted of the crime, never mind whether it's illicit charge or not, if he is convicted, 52% of Republicans say, according to a Reuters poll, they would not vote for President Trump. What is your polling telling you?
Well, it's the backlash is working among Republicans. That's why he's still going ahead. I mean, that Reuters, I don't like the way they frame their question, because the reality of this is most voters see this as Joe Biden just trying to stop his political opponent from beating him in the election next November. So right now, it's a dangerous time in American history because we've got a weaponized Department of Justice. You have a sitting president who's trying to cover up his corruption by indicting his political opponent and trying to get him convicted. I mean, those 1870 laws that Jack Smith is prosecuting under, one has a 20-year prison term, another one has the death penalty. I mean, this is bizarre. This is the kind of things that go on in banana republics, not the United States of America.
I want to shift gears to abortion rights, which has become a hot topic and certainly was during this debate. Watch this.
We need to stop demonizing this issue. This is talking about the fact that unelected justices didn't need to decide something this personal because it's personal for every woman and man. Now it's been put in the hands of the people. That's great. When it comes to a federal ban, let's be honest with the American people and say it will take 60 Senate votes. It will take a majority of the House. So in order to do that, let's find consensus.
John, your thoughts on where this abortion issue is developing within the GOP since Roe was overturned. And what of Nikki Haley's point that a federal ban is irrelevant without the votes in the Senate? And why is it a federal issue when the feds returned it to the states?
Well, if you look at whether people consider themselves pro-life or pro-abortion, when you look at the longer span of time, back in the 90s, 5-3, most voters would tell us that they were pro-choice. Now, because of the sonogram generation moving into the electorate, where they realize life it begins at some point way before abortion, is banned illegal. In a lot of states, they have, abortion up until the 9th month. I think most Americans were very happy that President Trump's Supreme Court justices allowed it to go back to the states, and a lot of states have moved the laws to protect life. So the Republican Party is a pro-life party. The Democrat Party is becoming abortion on demand up until the 9th month party, and they're out of sync with American public opinion. So I think Republicans who basically say we need to advance the cause of life. We need to say human life has value. That's working in the electorate right now, and that's why the Republicans have control of Congress, at least the House, and could have control of the Senate after the next election.
Before we run out of time, President Trump opted out of the debate in Milwaukee, but he chose to appear with Tucker Carlson for a 40-minute conversation on X or Twitter. Here's my question. Was that a smart move on Trump's part from a messaging standpoint to, grab this audience out in online or on their phones? And was he able to get more across to a public outside of the debate environment in this case?
I think it was the right move because, to go through the stress of a debate and have the adrenaline moving and then the next day go get arraigned before a Soros district attorney that has ties to Joe Biden is the next day. That's a lot of stress. And he just, he's very strong. He accepts it. He goes through this with, dignity and, they're making him a sympathetic figure. He could end up being the Nelson Mandela of America. This is like crazy. And so for him to have not appeared in the debate and do the counter program with Tucker Carlson, which as of last report that I saw, there's over 250 million views of that interview, which is astounding for the internet. So I think he did the right thing in terms of, he's got a bigger challenge. We got to beat Joe Biden. That's the most important thing that Donald Trump can do for the next election, and that's what he's focused on. And that debate seems to have been a missed opportunity for the Republicans, because if they don't stand up for him and his right to run as the opposition candidate, none of them are going to be successful, because right now the Republican Party is facing an existential threat from the Democrats, because if they have their way, they will use the justice system, they will use the FBI, they will use the IRS to defeat their political opponents, and we will have lost a free and fair democracy in the United States and free and fair elections. So, this is an important time in our history.
John McLaughlin of McLaughlin Associates and President Trump's pollster, thank you for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity.